So I have finally played Enshrouded, and what can I say? It was not supposed to pull me in like this. But after reaching level 32 and spending 50 hours in just 10 days, well, I think it's safe to say that it did. What started as just another survival craft game turned into one of the most addictive exploration experiences I've had in years. So today, let's talk about Enshrouded and see whether it's worth your time. Exploration is, well, in my opinion, the best part of Enshrouded. The world is seamless, enormous, even a little intimidating in its size. And I can't emphasize enough just how big this map is. Once you get your glider and grappling hook, it really starts to click. At first though, I approached it in the wrong way. Slow and careful. But somewhere along the way, something changed. The moment I started treating Enshrouded less like a slow survival sim and more like an action adventure with survival elements, the whole game opened up. The glider, the grappling hook, the verticality, it all started to flow together. And suddenly, I wasn't tiptoeing through the world anymore, I was flying through it. What really brings this world to life is its atmosphere. It never feels empty. There's plenty to discover, even though, well, sometimes it can feel a bit static. And what I mean by that is that there aren't any NPCs walking around or random events to stumble into, aside from the occasional enemy patrol at night. Visually though, it's breathtaking, especially during dawn, dusk or nighttime when the glow of the shroud or the sun lights up the fog. In those moments, it genuinely feels like you're on a real adventure. Speaking of the shroud, well, let's talk about the shroud itself. In theory, I think it's an exciting idea. You know, there's a toxic fog that limits your time inside. And at first, it feels tense and dangerous. But eventually, you realize that the timer is actually never really a threat. You can tweak it in the settings, sure, but on default difficulty, the way that the devs intended, I was hoping for a little more of a challenge. For a game literally named after the Shroud, it ends up being surprisingly forgiving. For all its leniency, the Shroud still defines how you explore the world. It separates each region and ties the whole map together in, a satisfying way. So, let's have a look at the different biomes. The Springlands, your starting zone, are green and inviting. There are rolling hills, ruins, and are a great introduction to all the landmarks you'll find later. The Shroud roots, elixir wells, flame shrines, spires, and the list goes on. From there you move into the low meadows, which introduce a new enemy type, the Vukas. And this is where one of my main criticism comes in. You've got the fell enemies in the Shroud, scavengers are introduced in the Springlands, and Vukas in the low meadows. And that's, well, kind of it. Yes, I mean, each region has a couple of unique foes, but the majority of enemies stay the same across the entire map. And after just a few hours, you've met almost every enemy type in the game. For a world this massive, and with so many fights, the sense of enemy discovery just doesn't keep up with the exploration. The Revelwood is the next area you are going to explore, and it is a dense forest surrounding the capital. This feels like a really natural evolution of the world. The Blackmire, a swampy jungle, is full of towering trees, and it was very satisfying to climb the Vuka structures there. Then there are the Nomad Highlands. They feature a dual layer layout. There's a shroud-filled valley below and a plateau above. And, well, to be honest, this made navigation a bit confusing at times. The Kindle Wastes are vast desert and breathtaking in scale. The orange dunes at sunrise are gorgeous, but it's also one of the emptier regions. And finally, the Albanese summit. Snowy peaks, slippery ice, and cold resistance mechanics. It is the first area where the biome really affects gameplay. Visually, it almost felt like Witcher 3's Skellige, and it might be my favorite zone. I felt like each biome has its own charm, and exploring them was consistently rewarding, not just for the sense of discovery, but also for the XP. In the early game, exploration gives you a ton of experience, which keeps the dopamine loop going strong. But when you're moving that fast and covering that much ground, you're constantly running into trouble. So, let's just stop flying across the map for a moment and have a closer look at combat. As mentioned earlier, I started the game too cautiously, treating fights like Dark Souls, slow and methodical, but once I realized how fast-paced the game wants you to be, it clicked. The combat feels best when you lean into its action side, sprinting around, attacking aggressively, and dodging constantly. Enemies come at you non-stop and the flow of fight feels great. For a game that clearly wants you to fight a lot and puts such a heavy focus on frequent action, I was kind of hoping for a bit more depth though. Even though the current systems work well together, the only thing is, it's a little static. For most of my playthrough, I used the same loop. Attack, dodge, and repeat. I mean, it's fun, but I found myself wishing for more active abilities. As a warrior, for example, I had my basic sword attack and one active skill, a jump attack. That's it, for hours. I would have loved something like a whirlwind or berserk ability, or maybe even weapon synergies. You know, like freeze an enemy with magic and then shatter them with a hammer. And I think combat could improve in one of two directions. Well, one, make it more dynamic with additional active skills, or two, more tactical by introducing stamina management for attacks and then forcing real-time choices. But the core responsiveness, hitting, dodging, timing your strikes, feels satisfying and fluid. Since I mentioned classes, or rather playstyles, let's talk about that. And maybe class might not be the right word, since you can freely mix and match skills. You can build as a warrior, rogue, archer, mage, healer, or any hybrid in between. The flexibility is great. But the skill tree UI on PC, nah, it isn't. It's big, clunky, and doesn't show all skills at once. It kind of works, but it's definitely an area that could use some love. So overall, the combat flows well and feels great moment to moment, but it lacks evolution and some depth over time. One thing is for sure though, enemies do get stronger. And well, what do you need to fight stronger enemies? Right, better gear. Let's dive into one of the core systems of the progression loop, crafting. As in every survival game, you start with absolutely nothing. First thing on the list, get some stones, sticks, fell a tree and craft some basic tools. The more you progress, the more you unlock, and the typical survival craft loop kicks in. The gear upgrades you unlock through crafting are visually distinct enough to feel genuinely rewarding. Resource costs are, well, for the most part, fair and balanced, meaning this never becomes a frustrating grind. A key part of this loop in Enshrouded is rescuing and placing NPCs in your base. These NPCs give you quests, and more importantly, they unlock crucial new crafting recipes and new crafting stations that expand your capabilities. However, I did hit some roadblocks with this system. Well, first, inconsistent crafting stations. So, you unlock new stations by completing quests given by the NPC. And after you place those stations in your base, you would think you could craft everything there. But no, for some reason, some items still need to be crafted at the quest giver. It's a bit confusing and creates unnecessary back and forth in my opinion. Second, the endgame busy work, suddenly needing low-level items like reptile leather again for crafting when there are no reptiles in the summit biome, forces you to backtrack across the massive map, and it felt a bit unnecessary. My only minor complaint about gear itself is that world drops sometimes made the crafted gear feel irrelevant. Thankfully though, there's a transmog system, so you can wear one armor set for the best stats and another one for the looks you want, which balances it out nicely. So while crafting itself could be streamlined for clarity, it all takes place in a spot you get to design yourself. Let's move on to the building system. Before you can start building, you will need to place a flame altar. Depending on its level, you can only build within a certain radius, and it's a mechanic that gives structure to your base building progression. From what I've seen, the system here is excellent. You have fantastic freedom. You can place predefined blueprints, for example, like a wall with a window in different sizes, or you can go fully creative and place little blocks to design something truly unique. What I really appreciated though is that building never really felt grindy. Many survival games punish you with resource farming before you can even get a small house up. Not here though. Chop a few trees, grab some stone and fiber, and you can already make a decent starter home. That being said, I've only scratched the surface of building, so I'm holding off on a full verdict for now, but from what I've seen, it's already excellent. And I will give an update once the next patch drops. While the core loops of the game are solid, what separates a good early access title from a great one is its polish. And that brings us to a part of the game that really impressed me: settings and performance. Graphics-wise, Enshrouded offers everything you would expect from a modern title: tessellation, SSAO, DLSS, and much more. I never had a single performance issue. The game ran flawlessly throughout my entire 50 hours of playtime. And what is more, it looks absolutely stunning. What really deserves praise though is how customizable it is on PC. You can rebind every single key, so if dodging on control annoys you, for example, well, just change it. Accessibility options are present, though somewhat limited. There's no colorblind mode yet, for example, but there's an arachnophobia mode, which is a nice touch. Most impressive of all are difficulty sliders. You can tweak almost everything: enemy health, enemy stamina, XP gain, crafting speed, well, you name it. It's one of the most flexible systems I've seen in a survival game. That said, I would still recommend playing on the default setting for your first run. So, we've covered exploration, combat, crafting and settings. And, well, now it's time to answer the final question. Is it worth it? And for me, it's an easy yes. I found myself always looking forward to something in game, be it a new level, new gear, a new biome, or unlocking a new crafting station. The progression systems really work well together here. And in my opinion, this is especially true of the movement progression, which ties unlocking new glider upgrades directly to discovering new biomes that feature more verticality or are simply larger in size. And with updates like the upcoming water biome, there's even more to look forward to. Yes, sometimes the world feels a bit static and combat could use more depth for my taste, but exploration is just so good in Enshrouded that it makes up for everything else. The combination of gliding, climbing and discovering massive ruins never stopped feeling great. So while Enshrouded has some issues, it perfects the most important feeling for me: the thrill of discovery, and therefore it gets my full recommendation. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps smaller channels grow. And let me know down in the comments how you liked Enshrouded or what games you would like me to cover next.